What's in the Dungeon podcast.
Oh,
I am Murph, and that is John. John is the resident expert on D&D, and I am Murph. I just asked. No, actually, it's the opposite. I am John.
If it's not apparent, I'm the guy wearing my face as a t-shirt.
That's true. You are. That is your face. Exactly.
And it's just essentially Murph.
Yeah. Murph is coming to us live from the depths of a volcano with some type of activity happening in the background.
You've
there.
heard of Mount Doom. Well, I'm at Mount Zoom, which is where old people who are streaming to their grandchildren go to purgatory.
Absolutely.
This is what Microsoft Office looks like everywhere. This is actually the witchcraft that is required to run Excel. Fear and loathing.
Yes, I am currently looking up the name of that game because I really, it's really bothering. But it's that arcade game, fantasy. It's a fantasy arcade game.
I always want to say Quest for
Dragon's Lair. It's Dragon's Lair. That's it.
That was
yes,
highly influential to a lot of stuff.
Yes. So Murph is coming to us from Dragon's Lair, the game.
The Dragon's Lair. Except I am, fun fact, am the dragon.
Oh no, he's the dragon.
I'm the big bad.
So if you've watched this before, I'm very sorry for your loss. But if you've watched this before, you'll know that we answer questions about D&D. I answer questions that Murph asks. Sometimes Murph also answers questions, and sometimes I ask them. But generally, the format is that Murph asks me questions about D&D because I know about like 0.5% more than he does. So
you say 0.5%, but that percentage is like scaled out a lot.
It's not.
It's not much larger.
It's like the actual playing of D&D. I just make shit up. It sounds good. So we take your questions, of which no one has sent any in. I'm very disappointed in our followership. They've not sent in any questions. So
I'm gonna put you on blast. Have we put the links to stuff? I mean, I know that we have the Twitter below, but is the email in the Twitch below?
Look here, Murph. I don't appreciate you.
I'm just saying.
Let me look. I'm gonna look right now.
At some point, we'll have a website too.
I think I put the Gmail.
At some point, we'll have a website. Is the Gmail down there?
I think I put the Gmail.
At some point, we'll have. Is it a link or is it just like copy and paste this Gmail? Is it a link or is it just like copy?
Oh no, it's not in there because the link has to be in HTTP. It can't, so I have to put it into like the about, like send us an email at. So it's not on the links page. Also, I didn't get to check because the minute I opened our Twitch, I got 6 different versions of you trying to tell me something. So I'm gonna mute it so I can actually look. What's in the dungeon? Yeah, I'm not liking that at all. I need to actually see the.
Need to see.
Go to my channel. Oh yeah, I do have it. It's in the About Us. Any questions, email us at whatsinthedungeon@gmail.com.
Cool.
So, last episode was on a Tuesday.
This one's on a Wednesday.
It's on a Wednesday.
Different time.
We're getting warmer. We're getting warmer. We're closing the gap.
We started off and then just like kind of broke.
Yeah. Well, I have family in town for a little bit, so this worked out better. And last week I think I was working Wednesday night. So
yeah, you worked pretty long. I'm unemployed. If anybody asks why, I'm always available.
I mean, but you do this, so that's like a job.
Yeah, sure, 1 day a week, for like an hour and a half.
I mean, hey, we can go to 5 days a week. It's just gonna be like all over the fucking place.
It's just gonna be a lot of me, and then you looking exhausted and sweaty and angry and just done with people.
D&D.
What is D&D? It looks like Emperor Palpatine crawling up.
Yes, absolutely. So
power.
So we're gonna try and stick to the Wednesdays, but it might not always be a Wednesday, and we'll try to update.
We'll get it up. You'll get at least as long as we can handle it, 1 episode a week.
1 episode a week, and it might.
Again, if you don't find us here, we have a YouTube page. You can always check it out. I mean,
we have a Twitter too.
If you ask us a question, we'll shout you out. So you'll get to go through the episode and see whether or not you were shouted out. And then we're going to talk about the shit we were going to talk about. It's like being here, just not live. Exactly.
Yeah. It's like listening to 2 people you don't know ask a question that you had. In fact, that's exactly it.
That's what it is.
100% description.
And while I'm thinking about it, there will be an audio only version on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, stuff like that. There's just like one or two small things that have to be done before we can get to those platforms.
And those small things are we have to figure out how to do that.
Well, no, doing it's one thing. It's affording it is the other.
Your screen is your cave is tearing slightly. There you go.
Yeah, sometimes the void.
Oh, okay, that's fine. It's just, the magical confluence of ley lines at that volcano.
I'm exactly at the 45th parallel.
Damn.
And that screws everything up.
I will say, not shout out, but like some random plug that I'm not getting paid for. The new book for D&D came out yesterday. The Journey to the Radiant Citadel, Travel Through the Radiant. God damn it! I literally own the book, and I can't remember what the damn name of it is.
Own it like you pre-ordered it, and now you will have it delivered?
No, I have it. Like it got delivered yesterday.
Oh wow!
Which is great about Amazon because like they always announce their D&D books like 3 months in advance. Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel is the name of the book.
So what is this? Is this like a lore book?
It's like the Radiant Citadel is a place in the ethereal plane. Shit. The ethereal or the astral plane. I literally have only cracked the spine once since I got it.
There's two differences. This is gonna kill me. There's a difference between astral and
yes, there is, and I can get into that at some point. But literally, it's a place in between or in this one realm, either astral plane or ethereal plane, I can't remember. And like all these beings have gathered and created this citadel, and it branches off into all these other realms. And this book adds a few, like a chapter or two of the lore of the place, and then it gives you, I think it's 13 or 14 adventures to go through the whole book. I think it'll carry you. Yeah, I think it'll carry you from levels 1 to 13 or 14. But it's like there's a book called Tales from the Yawning Portal that's got like all the old first, second, third, fourth edition adventures that were really great rebranded for 5th edition. You can use them all in a row, or you can take like one or two quests, pick and choose, and put them into your campaign, which is really great. So it's like somewhere in between a campaign book and a setting book because it's not as structured as a campaign book. It's not like Curse of Strahd where you appear in Ravenloft. You have to kill Strahd, and you're going to go through like 20 levels to get there and kill Strahd. It's more like, okay, this quest, you have to go find a fishmonger's son who's been killed by a Gith, and you have to bring him to justice. And you can follow up into the next quest, or you could just put this one into your adventure to introduce the Radiant Citadel. Okay. But this book comes before the new set that's coming out, and it kind of introduces it, but the new series, series is called Spelljammer, which is a space travel series of books. And they've got so I pre-ordered that one as well. It comes out in August. They've got a campaign, they've got a lore book, and I think they've got like a setting book. And it's 3 books, and it also comes with like a DM screen and shit like that. And it's really cool because it introduced like traveling the astral plane, which is basically like flying through space.
Okay, so astral is outside of the realm of the planet, and then ethereal is like spirit realm?
No, so we can get into this right now.
Well, it's just like, because like I don't know the difference. Like I've never played a campaign that was like, we are now in
it's all good.
Twilight Zone,
it's all good. So the ethereal plane is it overlaps the material plane. So every location on the PMP, the prime material plane, has a analog in the ethereal plane. It's like a sheet over a couch. It's like the couch is the prime material plane, and the ethereal plane is like the plastic wrapping you put over the couch. It's still the same, it's just different. So you're
tying this back into something that you said last week. It's the Upside Down from Stranger Things.
Yeah, sort of, but it's not. It's not like evil. It's not inherently evil. It's just there.
No, it's just like.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of it. Like the only other thing I think of is like Silent Hill, where it's the exact same setting, but like.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's like if you were looking at it through like a scope lens, and you have a filter on top of it. You were looking at the filter with the ethereal, and then the prime plane is you just take the filter off.
Yeah, the astral plane it's like dreamland basically. It's you can only travel there usually as disembodied souls to reach either like heaven or hell. Basically, it's the divine and demonic planes in between. But it's a realm of thoughts and dreams and shifting things. Like it's not generally a tangible place that you can inhabit. It's more of a place you can experience. So like
Dragon Age the Fade.
Sort of. Like you can, like there are spells in the game like astral projection will get you into the astral plane, and you can travel and view things in the astral plane, and it's not like the ethereal plane in that it doesn't overlap the ethereal plane. It's its own, yeah. But it exists everywhere. Like you can get into it from anything, as long as you have like either the right spell or the right portal or all this other shit.
So it exists again, overlapping, but not the same. It would be like like the astral version of a desert could be a lush forest.
Yeah, and the ethereal and the astral plane are, because I've looked it up. I don't want to talk out of my ass. They're called transitive planes. So they're the two planes that they serve mostly as ways to travel. Like you don't see a lot of people living in the ethereal or the astral plane. Normally you enter that to get somewhere else. The key difference,
portal to something.
Yeah, the key difference is the Gith. The Gith inhabit the astral plane.
Right, because you said that they were going after the mind flayers, and that's how they travel on the backs of dragons.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, that's cool. So let me ask you like this: Is there magical items that also can get you into the particular planes?
Yeah.
You don't have.
Yeah, there's rods that are attuned to certain planes that like can get you to the places. You can also just like create a magic item that does that. But
the reason I ask about the Fade specifically, because in Dragon Age the elves had the Illuvians, the mirrors that allowed them to transit in like pocket dimensions between locations that another mirror was. So I didn't know if it was similar to that. Because
sort of.
Like, we use it for travel, but instead of just being like point A to point B, there might be some actual distance in between it to.
Yeah. So that's a good way of describing it. The Radiant Citadel, which to tie back into that, exists in the ethereal plane as like a hub. People visit it, and like it branches out into other realms and shit like that.
That's cool. So let me ask, like in an actual campaign, like let's say like you were approaching, you're trying to get to a different area of a continent or something, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a sea in between you, and it would take months to travel around the sea. But it's 2 days if I take the ethereal plane across, because the landscape is different. Would that make sense? Like you can get there, but only if one of you can do this thing and you can just walk across the water because it's not water there.
Yeah, I mean that would. It just depends, because the ethereal plane is like I said, it's transitive and it's very shifting and different. And like at least with astral projection, there's a cord that ties you to your actual body, so you can't. That's like,
okay.
So like if something fucks with your body while you're in the astral plane, you could die like very easily because you're comatose.
Astral plane is like if the whole adventure was happening in the astral plane, it's just 4 dudes laying on the ground.
Yeah.
With somebody having to protect them, which would look super dull to anyone that wasn't actually in the plane with them.
Yeah.
But ethereal is like my physical body can go through it.
I mean, they're both sort of the same. Again, it just depends on the wording of the spell, but like both spells can get you to places that you weren't originally at. It just depends on what the DM allows. Also, they're very, I mean, like etherealness, I think is 7th level. Yeah, it's 7th level, and astral projection is 9th level. So they're not, sorry, spell levels are not tied to character levels. So max character level is 20, max spell level is 9. Because you don't get a new spell every level. You get like every 3 or 4 levels, a new spell slot opens up for that level. So like astral projection is a necromantic 9th level spell. You and 8 willing creatures within range project your astral bodies into the plane of astral.
It's a necromancy spell?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Really?
The material body you leave behind is unconscious and in suspended animation. It doesn't need food or air and doesn't age. Your astral body resembles your mortal form, blah, 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 blah. The principal difference is the addition of a silvery cord that extends from between your shoulder blades and trails behind you, fading to invisibility after 1 foot. This cord is your tether to your material body. As long as the tether remains intact, you can find your way home. If the cord is cut, something that can happen only when an effect specifically states that it does, your soul and body are separated, killing you instantly. Your astral form can freely travel through the plane and can pass through portals there leading to any other plane. If you enter a new plane or return to the plane you were on when casting the spell, your body and possessions are transported along with the silver cord, allowing you to re-enter your body as you enter the new plane. Your astral form is a separate incarnation. Any damage or other effects that apply to it have no effect on your physical body, nor do they persist when you return to it. The spell ends for you and your companions when you use your action to dismiss it. When the spell ends, the affected creature returns to its physical body and awakens. The spell might also end early for you or one of your companions. A successful dispel magic spell used against an astral or physical body ends the spell. If a creature's original body or its astral form drops to 0 hit points, the spell ends. If the spell ends and the silver cord is intact, the cord pulls the creature's astral form back to its body, ending its state. If you return to your body prematurely, your companions remain in their astral forms and must find their own way back to their bodies, usually by dropping to 0 hit points. So it's very specific.
They have to die in order to come back, because I'm guessing you as the guide, if you were taken out prematurely, obviously you couldn't lead them back to what's going on.
If you are the spell caster and you are removed from the area, they have to figure shit out by themselves. Which is not impossible. It's just extremely difficult because as the spellcaster, you have the tether, and you know what's going on, and you can kind of make your way back.
They're not also like tethered to you.
Well, they're tethered to themselves, but only you, since you cast the spell, only you have the means of dispelling it and bringing everyone back. So if you're taken out without doing that, they can't end the spell because they didn't cast the spell.
Not unless there's some big brain plays like Ring of Deep Spell or whatever.
Yeah, so astral projection is like a really cool spell, but it's also very specific.
But it's weird that that's necromancy.
Well, so
necromancy is I know that it doesn't have to be inherently evil, but like it's not like a. I don't feel like lawful good is necromancy. You know, it's not like. It feels like a weird thing. For it to be tied with like a connotatively evil.
Well, so necromancy is not what you would think it is in this game. Like necromancy in Skyrim is literally just summoning dead. Necromancy in D&D is more the flow of negative energy as opposed to just undead shit. So like there's False Life is a necromantic spell you get early on that just gives you false hit points. It's like a buffer for your HP. There's other shit that like Innervation will channel negative energy, or there's that, what is it called? Negative energy flood, I think is a spell, and it literally describes you control the flow of negative energy to harm people around you, and that's really all necromancy is it's not.
So negative energy, is that like dark matter?
No, it's just just like the opposite of like the healing energy. So it's not necessarily damaging. Just like if you heal a zombie, it'll take damage.
But it's like so
it's just negative
magic on a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's more controlling the flow of that than anything. It's not necessarily just summoning undead and doing evil shit. It's more so using negative energy as a tool. Which is something you can do on the astral plane, because the astral plane is generally a plane. It's not dark or anything. It's just generally most people associate it with the darker ethereal plane. Like ethereal is heaven, and the astral plane is purgatory, which is not. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect analogy because they are completely different and they're completely separate.
So when I'm thinking of so astral being, you said the darker energy of the two. So I'm gonna label an example that I would have in my head. Tell me yay or nay here.
Okay.
The Soul Cairn from Skyrim.
Yeah, that's sort of it. Except
because again, it's like that's related to death, but not necessarily having like all to do with death. Like it's based off of the energy of.
So I can actually read the description of the astral plane, which might help. The astral plane is a realm of thought and dream where visitors travel as disembodied souls to reach the plane of the divine and the demonic. It is a great silvery sea, the same above and below, with swirling wisps of white and gray streaking among motes of light resembling distant stars. Erratic whirlpools of color flicker in midair like spinning coins. Occasionally, bits of solid matter can be found here, but most of the astral plane is an opened, endless domain. So it's easier to think of it as a sea. Like the astral plane is more of a sea of swirling air, basically.
Just like Googled images of what it would look like, and it's like a terrifying, wispy sea of color.
Mm-hmm. Whereas the description for the ethereal plane is a misty, fog-bound dimension that is sometimes described as a great ocean. Its shores, called the border ethereal, overlap the material plane and the inner planes, so that every location on those planes has a corresponding location on the ethereal. Certain creatures can see into the ethereal, and the see invisibility and true seeing spell can grant that ability. Some magical effects also extend from the material into the ethereal, particularly effects that use force energy such as force cage and wall of force. The depths of the plane, the deep ethereal, are a region of swirling mists and colorful fogs. So they're very similar imagery. It's just that one is specifically a facsimile of the prime material and the inner planes, and one is more of a gateway dimension that people travel through.
So just looking at it, because all I did was Google image it, but I specifically put in art. So this is like art based off of. This isn't like, oh, this is my... So like from what I'm looking at is like, again, I'm looking at the astral sea is the
Yeah.
image it's giving me,
Yeah.
and it's basically a ship floating through the air, but the air is filled with like the aurora borealis
Yep.
and big chunks of floating debris,
Yeah.
landmass kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. But what the ethereal plane gave me was a lot more vegetation. There's a lot of like trees,
and that's because
flatland.
That's because it's a copy of the prime material plane. So you will still have like locations and shit, and it might not all be the same, but you'll still have a lot more descriptive, concrete features as opposed to like the dynamic, changing nature of the astral.
It's not like the shadow realm version of the normal plane.
No.
But it's like if you were wearing traditional 3D glasses. You have the red lens and the blue lens, and they're kind of...
The best description I can think of is when Frodo puts on the ring. When Frodo puts on the ring, he's still in the exact same space, but no one can see him. People can still like sometimes interact with him depending on how strong they are magically, and he can still interact sometimes with other people depending on how weak they are.
Their attunement has a lot to do
yes.
with like...
And that's what it said. It said like some magic can interfere between one plane and the other because they're tied so closely. But the main use of the ethereal plane that most people use it for is invisibility. When you go invisible, you basically enter the...
invisible, you're just plane shifting.
Yeah, you've just... Well, careful, because plane shift is an actual spell, and it means something completely different. Yeah, plane shift is a spell that will... it can be used aggressively, and you can basically point at someone and shunt them off into another plane against their will. They have to fail
their physical body, or you basically force astral project...
Oh, no. Their physical body. You can just literally push them out.
A physical body can survive in a different plane.
Yeah.
Are you just susceptible to anything, or...
I don't think that's actually plane shift. I think I misspoke. There's a... Maybe it's demi-plane. Plane shift is... it's more of like a teleportation spell you cast with other people. Oh, wait, no, you can. You can use this spell to banish an unwilling creature to another plane. Make a melee spell attack against it. They must make a charisma saving throw. If they fail, they're transported to a random location on the plane of existence you specify. And there's a shit ton of planes. So like you could cast this at some like
people into the astral sea, constantly chunk people into the sea.
It is a 7th level spell, so I mean you've got to, it's a pretty high level spell to get.
And there's obviously some caveats to it because like you can't just get it for the sake of you have to actually succeed. But like
well, not only do you have to succeed on a spell attack roll, you also have to have them fail on a charisma saving throw.
Can you imagine like you get to the big bad and the first move you do is you just chunk that mofo into the astral sea.
It's surprise.
What'd you do to defeat him? Oh, I literally plane shifted him.
But most higher level creatures, especially legendary ones, have what's called legendary resistance, where like 3 times a day they can choose to succeed on a saving throw no matter what. So like normally big bosses have mechanics that keep you from just throwing them away. Power word kill. Oh shit. Nope, you can't. Haha.
Well, that's cool though. I mean, like I realized this wasn't what we were going to talk about, but this is actually super interesting because I didn't realize that there was... Okay, so there's 3, from what we've talked about so far, there's 3 planes of existence here. Are there other planes that we haven't mentioned?
Oh, yeah. Fuck, there's a lot. Let me take the...
Also, if you have any visuals that
you
want to put up...
I'm gonna copy some images, and I'm going to put in the... So this is a good one. This is, I think, the one in the book. You might have to slightly scroll in a little bit. But... it kind of describes the different planes, like the different physical planes. Let's see.
Is it that chart that I think I saw?
I don't think so.
Also, there's a thing called planar geography.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's see, the Great Wheel of Cosmology. That might.
Yeah. So this Archives of Lusterian Planescape, where it's ethereal, water elemental plane, air elemental plane, all that stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Astral plane. A cosmic plane.
Yeah.
There's 2 cosmic planes.
There's actually
4
few
cosmic planes.
Let's see. So planes.
That's a lot of planes. And then there's another one that's like planes of the abyss. God, there's so many planes. No one is safe.
Yeah. So there's outer planes, transitive planes,
physical,
mirror planes,
mental planes, and then spiritual planes. Yeah,
there's a shit ton. So and that they kind of align with a lot of mythology. Like if you look at like especially the cosmic plane. Let's see if I can make sense of this.
I didn't realize this is a deep dive if I've ever seen one.
Yeah. So you've let me see. D&D planes, great wheel diagram. That might be better. Save image. What did you post? Where did you post
Plains
that?
of Lustre. It's in the master chat for the video chat. So like in the bottom right, you should, or the top right hand corner, you should see like a little chat box on your image.
Oh shit! Yeah.
You should be able to click that, and it'll open a chat box to the right.
Yeah.
This is the first one I saw that was.
That's not the D&D one. That looks like something someone made. But that's kind of similar. Let me.
Yeah, there's a few of these. There's like a circle one. Mystara's Inner Planes, D&D 5e FR concept cos. That fucking diagram needs to die. That was awful.
There's actually a lot. Let's see. D&D planes. I'm gonna find something that's encompassing, because fuck this. Let's see.
There's another one here with a bunch of squiggles from the World Builder blog. Border
Copy
World,
image.
the Feywild, Shadowfell, Sigil. A lot of shit in the astral.
This is similar, and I think probably the closest. So if you look in the middle, there's the material plane.
Yep.
And then on each side, you kind of have the like elemental planes, and then in between those are two demi planes called the Shadowfell and the Feywild.
So like the further out you get, the more magical the creatures are.
Sort of. But they all feed into each other. And basically the way this is a good visual because it explains how the prime material plane exists. It exists because of the confluence of all the different planes coming together. So
the estuary of shit happening is the material plane.
Yeah, basically. And then you've got all this other stuff happening. Let's see.
So crazy. There's so much. I mean, again, I realize this game's been out since like the 70s, so it's had a lot of time to expand upon itself, but like, God, that's a lot of shit.
So
There's so many questions I have now. Like, so many.
This is a good one for understanding there's a lot of planes, but if you look, there's negative plane, positive plane, outer planes.
There's more planes?
Yeah. So the thing in the middle, starting with the elemental chaos and going inside, that's the image I just posted. This image goes further and explains all the upper, lower, and shit like that. So starting in the middle, you've got the two neutral planes, Mechanus and Limbo. Mechanus is a realm of like modrons, which are like little constructs that enforce law and order. Limbo is where souls kind of reside before they know where they're going. I mean, it's like purgatory to some extent. And then you've got Archeron, the Nine Hells, Gehenna, Hades, Carcerai, the Abyss, Pandemonium. The Nine Hells are where the devils live, and the Abyss are where the demons live. And there's a key difference between devils and demons, and they fight constantly for supremacy.
And there's like a player race of like
tieflings.
Demon
they're tieflings. It's people who have in their lineage someone made a deal with the devil or fucked a devil or something, and came about. But the upper realms, the astral plane realms, are where shit's nicer, I guess is the best way to put it. And if you look, there's also, if you see right above them, there's the astral plane. That's kind of the way they explain it, is the astral plane goes through all of these. And you notice they don't have the ethereal plane on here because the ethereal plane just exists on top of all this. It's like, do you remember those overhead projectors?
Yeah.
The ethereal plane is basically that plastic cover they put over the paper they were doing, so they could write on it. Yeah,
that you could write on.
Yeah, okay, which allows you to slip slightly into another plane. The astral plane,
projection mapping, essentially. Like when you have the projector that goes over the sand and you move the sand and it moves with it.
Whereas the astral plane exists all around everyone and serves as like a gateway.
You can almost say that the astral plane is something that everything exists within. It encompasses
sort
all
of
things.
Yeah, but it's still its own thing. It's still separate. But like, it's
the sea that all the other islands are floating in, essentially.
Yeah. So there's a shit ton of things going on, and this is why D&D is such a big resource. This is also, I think, just for the Forgotten Realms. So like the other settings like Eberron, Dragonlance have their own sort of cosmology, but this is the most common one, and it's the one people are most. Yeah. It's the one people are most associated with.
Dude, props to you, because I could not. There's so much that, like, world history is easier to remember than 90% of what.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and a lot of this you don't like ever encounter. Like most people, like if they're gonna do a negative or a lower plane adventure, they'll go to the Abyss or the Nine Hells because those are very clearly fleshed out. Like there's lots of adventures that involve the Nine Hells. There's lots of adventures that involve the Abyss because those are the two most common because they have such well-known inhabitants. Like Demogorgon, the titular thing from Stranger Things, is a demon lord in the Abyss.
Oh, okay. So
Mephistopheles
in D&D, is that based off of like the Catholic thought of like the 9 layers?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's got all the different levels that. I don't know if it's the same as Catholic cosmology, but there's a layer. There's 9 layers. The lowest layer being the one where the strongest demon lives, which is Asmodeus, and then like Mephistopheles is down there in his own thing. Levistus, like names you'll recognize just from mythology and shit like that. Baal, I think, is down there. There's Mephistopheles, Levistus, Asmodeus, Zariel, lots of other things.
Some of these are actually based off of like Catholic like hierarchy demon names.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Catholics got theirs from the Romans because you look and there's Hades and Gehenna and Carceri, which are specifically Roman and Greek.
I mean, 90% of Christianity is co-opted from something else that they introduced for the sake of continuity. But
yeah, I mean, and then you look up at the top, you've got like Mount Celestia, which closely resembles Mount Olympia. You've got Elysium, which is where the Greeks would go, the fields of gold that you could live in. And then you've got all these different ones. Isgard, which is like the Nordic one.
Yep.
Arcadia, which is cool. But they generally, these planes don't do too much.
Arcadia was the city of magic, wasn't it? It was like the heaven for the greatest mages, like the place that you would. I don't know if it is in D&D, but I'm trying to think of like the basis of Arcadia was like, it was like where traditional religion philosophers thought that they went, like if they hit their version of enlightenment. I thought.
Maybe, but in D&D, it's more. It's more warrior related. So Arcadia.
So is it more like Valhalla?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, not too much. But it's known as the what is it? The peaceable kingdoms of Arcadia. It's a plane of law and order. There's no chaos. It's very much regulated. And there's layers to it and shit.
It's funny because again, so like as a Mortal Kombat fan, they have the different realms, and that the realm of order is one of them, which is exactly what that sounds like.
Yeah,
it's just like the most peaceful society on the planet, and it's all badasses who are just really into following laws.
Yeah, and most of these planes attribute to an alignment, which we haven't really talked about, but you've got the Punnett square of lawful, chaotic, neutral, good, neutral, evil. Most of these align very specifically with one of them. So Mechanus is lawful neutral. It's extremely law and order based, but there's no good and evil. It's just we follow the law is the law. The 9 Hells is very much lawful evil. You've got the whole economy of the 9 Hells is built around contracts and acquiring souls and using those souls to power, your armies and shit like that. Whereas,
so it's like I'm doing everything by the book here, but it's for nefarious reasons.
Yeah. Whereas the Abyss is much more chaotic evil. The demons really have no strict law and code. They exist. The Abyss is like a tumultuous, nebulous abyss where all the demons reside, and they kind of just do their own shit. Sometimes they fight each other. Most of the times they fight other devils and angels. But it's always chaotic. Like there's no real rhyme or reason to the Abyss, which is reflected in the adventures. Like there's one called Out of the Abyss, literally, that takes you from level 1 to like 14 or 15. That you wake up as a prisoner in the Abyss and you have to escape. And I think one of the final bosses you have to kill Demogorgon, or at least fight Demogorgon. But it's cool. So this is probably the best representation of how the planes work. And then you work your way inside. You've got elemental chaos. You've got air, water, earth, and fire. And then you see right there, there's the ethereal plane that kind of overlaps the material plane very effectively. And then the Feywild and the Shadowfell are where like magical creatures come from. Like the Feywild is where elves hail from. It's like a combination of planes before you get to the material plane. You can phase into it and shit. And Shadowfell is actually where like the Raven Queen and the Kinku and other shit are from.
Again, relating this to something I understand. So those outer fringes of the material plane is like where the veil is thin. So that's why there's more.
Yeah, you could say that. It's more magically influenced and shit.
Right. So there's going to be more magically influenced creatures at those locations because that's where the influx is.
Yeah, and then you get to the prime material plane, which is just, basically Earth. But yeah, so that's kind of a semi-detailed look at the planes.
Okay, so with that, so the elemental planes, right? Is that just an abyss of? I say abyss, it's not really, but like just an existing area of nothing but that element.
I mean, no, there's other shit going on, but that's like the primary element. You'll find like your they have the different elemental spirits like the Jinn and the Ifrit and the water ones in the air. I can't remember. There's like specific elemental creatures that reside there and live there and like do their own shit.
So like the water one, is it just a giant ocean or is it like actually
a merit? Is it a merit?
Because again, it's so fascinating to me that like there's so many things. Like you could have one campaign and see so many settings.
Yeah. So like there's continue without disabling. There's Myrmidons, there's Frost Salamanders, there's the Tao, which is like the stone elemental, the Genie, which is like the air elemental, Ifriti, which is the fire elemental, and the Merid, which is the water elemental. You've also got like the 4 legendary ones, the Leviathan, the Phoenix, the Zaratan, and the Elder Tempest. They all kind of make up those things, and sometimes, they cross over into the material plane, but they've originated, all the elemental creatures originated in the elemental plane. And whether or not they're in the material plane is moot. They came from the elemental plane. But again, this is all dependent on the lore of your world. So like you can fuck with this and do whatever the fuck you want. Some people's campaigns are different. Some people's rely heavily on this. It doesn't really matter.
So with there being like heavily elemental based planes of existence, is there like a D&D version of a Spriggan?
Yeah, I mean, there's like, what are they called?
Or I'm trying to think in Elder Scrolls what they call them, because in Skyrim you can summon. They call them the elementals, but it's like
so the Spriggans are probably what are they? They're in
those
Strahd.
are specifically forest based. They're the wood
saplings. D&D 5.
Because it's just like it's an elemental based spirit creature that has somehow warped its element into a physical thing. Because like the frost elemental is just a giant glacier that moves.
Yeah.
The fire, they call it a Spriggan, but it's really not. But it's literally just like superheated charcoal that can move around with flames.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, you have that in D&D. I mean, they've got not millions, probably thousands of creatures at this
almost
point.
Every high fantasy based storyline has 90% ripped off either Tolkien or D&D.
Yeah, just because they're so large.
I mean, it's just like, but you've got such an encompassing thing, it's hard not to have.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you just muted yourself.
I did. I don't know how.
Yeah. I'm glad about that.
Evidently the plus button on my numpad mutes me.
Oh boy. But yeah, man, that's so crazy that there's all this. Like, I had no idea. I had no idea that there was more than just. Because I mean, like having the ethereal kind of makes sense, but I didn't realize like how expansive. I also immediately thought when you were talking about the 9 hells, I was like, man, it would make a great Dante's Inferno campaign to have to fight your way through the 9 hells.
Yeah, it's cool, and they have like adventures that will do that. Like the Descent into Avernus. Avernus is the first layer of hell, and it involves Baldur's Gate and shit. That's a fun. I think I have that book.
Is Baldur's Gate like the gate that separates that realm from?
No. Baldur's Gate is the gate in Baldur's Gate. Just refers to the gate of the city. It's not. It does not serve as a gate. It's just that. Baldur? Yeah, it's called Baldur's Gate. The city's called Baldur's Gate because Baldur erected a gate, basically. But that specific adventure, just like Baldur's Gate, is the hive of like a cult and shit that are seeking to turn the tide of the war in Avernus. Because Avernus, as the first layer of hell, is where all the angels and devils fight. So like either they never really like make any inroads into each other, except for the first layer of heaven and the first layer of hell. They'll generally swap between where they're fighting. It's like it's
trench warfare between demonic and angelic creatures.
Let's see which
that's the French ravine right there. It's just like those two conjoining areas.
In what book is it? Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, they talk about the theory of balance, which Mordenkainen, as a lore character, is a fan of, and it talks about like all the different wars, like the war between the Gith and the Illithids, the war between the elves and the drow, the war between the demons or the devils and the angels, and it talks about like how, like at least for Mordenkainen, he proposes that you can't ever let one side do better than the other, because even if the good side wins, you need balance in the universe. So he's like part of this group that goes through the world and planes, just making sure that no one side gets the better of the other, because it'll fuck up all the mortal shit happening. So
so that's strictly mortal idea.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's an ideal by mortals for the preservation.
Because like if the devils get the upper hand in the fight for heaven or hell, they'll unleash chaos, all this other shit, and then you also have, if the angels win, they'll unleash order and law that might not be good for everyone. Like it'll
be like martial law across the entire mortal plane.
Yeah, and it'll be difficult for either people, because they're not mortal, they don't understand how the material plane works to a necessary extent, so it's difficult. And I think that
so like I guess like the balance here is to try to make sure that no side realizes that there's interference that sways it. So they're doing some like secret society.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think that's, I mean, they've kind of they've changed it. I mean, he still like does that in the lore, but the new book, Monsters of the Multiverse, doesn't really focus on the conflicts that much. It just talks about the different monsters, which is fine. But that one specifically has like very specific chapters where it goes into the conflicts of the realms. Like, okay, this is these people and they're fighting these people, and these are the different creatures that work for them and that you can use stat blocks for. It was a really cool book when it came out.
Interesting concept too, to have have that happening in the back. Like, obviously, if your campaign's not involving it, it doesn't matter. But like to know that within the grand eccentric lore of everything,
and D&D's good about that. Because they have characters,
like subplots out the ass.
Yeah, well, and also like they're characters who write like Volo's Guide to Monsters, Mordenkainen's Tonophobes, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. These characters they use to like name their books are also in adventures and shit. Like in Curse of Strahd, you meet a wizard who's lost his memory and he doesn't know what the fuck's going on. It turns out like if you follow his story plot, it's Mordenkainen. He came to this plane, and in order to protect himself from the powers of corruption, he cast mind blank on himself. So no one could steal his thoughts, but in the course of that also kind of forgot what the fuck he was doing. There's one adventure, I think it's Waterdeep, where you meet Volo, who's this traveling writer who just documents all the different experiences he had. He interviews like all the villains and good guys and shit, and like you meet him. It's kind of cool that they do that because they put names to faces. There's also something in Waterdeep where you can fight against Xanathar, which is this big sentient beholder. You don't kill him, but you can kill like his minions or his pet goldfish, and it like enrages him.
Is that the one in the ornate bowl?
Yeah, mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah. So I saw a joke about that the other day where it was like, "Where did you get that goldfish?" And he's like, "Oh, I ate it from the treat bowl that the guy had up next to the throne." And he's like, "We need to leave.
We need to leave right now." Yeah, because you don't fucking mess with his fish. So that's like a fun thing. I like that they do that in D&D.
So
it makes it easier.
I guess in that same sense, and I hate to compare this because it's not my favorite series of all time, but it's like the Fantastic Beasts book in lore of the Harry Potter series, but then you actually get to see that was a real person that actually does real. It's not just like a bullshit story. It's like, this is a real person, and in lore these books actually mean something.
I don't know much about Harry Potter, and I know less about Fantastic Beasts, but I'm assuming yes, it's like that.
Yeah. Well, the only reason I even bring that up is because you said that there's a gentleman who wrote a book about the various creatures that you can meet, and then it's like, oh, there it is.
You can meet him in the adventure. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing because it's like, in the original Harry Potter series, the Fantastic Beasts is a book that you can read that universe, and then they just made a movie about the guy who actually wrote that book. So
so it's like the same thing.
Like the guides that you read aren't just like the fictional guides for yourself. It's like these are tomes that your character could literally be holding in their hands. Yeah, so it adds a layer of detail that I appreciate, and I think that's cool. But do they write it as if it was written? Yeah, in that, or is it written like in plain English for us? But
it's written in plain English, but then there's like notes and scrawls in the sidelines and in the margins about stuff.
That's cool because it adds character.
Yeah, and it's definitely more fleshed out that way. But Murph,
I appreciate that.
Murph, we've done something wrong. We haven't even discussed the question of last week.
I mean, okay, again, but this has been a fascinating topic. I'm learning a lot here. Like,
I'm
this is
glad.
the purpose of the podcast. So even if we don't ask the question,
But Murph, our viewers are expecting this.
that's true. That's true. Okay, so all right, so we've been at this for what?
45 minutes.
44. Yeah, about 45 minutes. So that's okay. So we'll just title this one "The Planes."
The Planes.
And a brief explanation of such.
The brief
But we'll get into-
explanation of the planes.
Yeah, like a super simplified, because I'm imagining that the shit in this is like an hourglass. Like, you got me to the first point, and then it bottoms out into this giant expansive.
Yeah, I think the Dungeon Master's Guide has like a page or two description of all of the planes in it that kind of like give you a better
still less
description
than I
of
was
what's going on.
expecting.
Well, the Dungeon Master's Guide, I mean, it has like everything in it. It might be more just depending on what the realm is. We got a new follower.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Yo.
Thank you.
Oh, it's Funa. Hey, what's up, Funa?
I don't. Is that...
They follow Brandon and I. They're really cool.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, before we move to this piece, what is your favorite plane to run a campaign in? Outside of the mortal plane, material plane.
I don't know. I like. So I'm currently running. I'm trying to. We'll see how it goes. I like.
They keep not canceling.
Yeah, I like the Domains of Dread, which are a demi-plane. They're not on the sheet because they're not like demi-planes exist aside from all the major planes as like pocket dimensions, and the Domains of Dread are little pocket dimensions where these nebulous dark powers exist to corrupt and steal energy from things. So there's a book called Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, and Ravenloft is like the official title of the Domains of Dread, but they're all different little pocket dimensions where the dark powers have stolen what's called Dark Lords too, and the Dark Lords are people throughout time and history and the past who have like made super evil or super bad decisions or done horrible things.
A demon just showed up and stole Hitler and took him into a pocket.
Yeah, I mean basically, but then they feed off the negative energy that they create. So like let's say there's a warlord, like Strahd is one, like the very big vampire in D&D his name is Strahd. He was a warlord and a good ruler at one point, but he let his jealousy for his brother and his wife like corrupt his mind, and he like went into like a rage, killed his brother, and so like he did a bunch of bad shit, and so because of that the dark powers closed his realm off using what's called the Mists of Ravenloft, which is like a feature they have. They closed the realm off, transported it into their demi-plane, and cursed him so that like he can't leave. He doesn't know what's happening. He became a vampire because he made like a dark pact with one of them, and they feed off of all the terror and dark energy that he puts out there. So they basically, it's like the Collector from I guess Guardians of the Galaxy type deal. They've got basically, you can view all these demi-planes as little boxes where they've got their villain that churns out cruelty, evil, malice, hatred, and they feed off of that and grow stronger and stronger.
And
then
then they would get bigger from letting them, like corrupting the person even more and then setting them free, because
so that's the thing, is they're trapped. They're trapped in Ravenloft. They can't leave their realms, but they can.
They're doing everybody a favor, because if this person's an asshole and he's killing everyone, and then they
True,
just take him and now he's gone.
But in most cases they don't just take him; they take everyone around him. So like with Strahd, they didn't just take Strahd; they took all of his world, Barovia, which was like a country. It had all these villagers in it. They
closed off and
so it's called the Mists of Ravenloft, and whenever the dark powers, like someone catches their attention, they can use their power on the prime material plane to use the mists to section off a part of the world and transport it into their demi-plane.
So does it, and then this is going to sound stupid, but is it like an ice cream scoop just comes in and takes that whole section out? And then like so there's a crater where that used to be, or it's just raised land?
It's just, so that's the thing, is it can be whatever you want, but like in my campaign, I have it so that like once people in the prime material plane approach where Barovia was, they don't know what the fuck's happening. They have collective amnesia. They get lost. They maybe they attribute it to like there's an eclipse or some shit. Like it's just supernatural. They can't get to where they're trying to go.
So it's still physically there, but
no, it's not.
Powers that be are.
It's not physically there. It can't be physically there.
It's like what game is that, or what movie? There's like a section where like by transferring yourself through a specific desert area, it like wipes your mind. So while you're there, you're like, what the hell is going on? But once you get out, you don't even remember being there. You're just like, I exist for some reason. What the hell just happened?
Yeah, so basically the way in which it works can be based on like how you as the DM want it to, but they basically take the realm, they take the area of the thing they want, they section it off with the mist, and in some instances they leave it there to like entrap other people. But most of the time it's closed off. So like either people will travel to where it was and it's there's a fog and they can't make their way through the fog, so they turn around and leave. And then over like the centuries and the millennia, people forget about it because no one can get to it. And
it's
then
an old story at this
yeah,
point. Like,
basically.
The legend of
but
this city
every so often the mists will open or the mists will come for certain people to bring them to this world because they like change, they like to introduce new things. So like if the dark realms are stagnating and there's not like anything happen, maybe the dark powers take the players in this campaign and put them somewhere. And that's like the story of what most of Barovia or Ravenloft.
So again, probably like thinking too hard into this, but just out of curiosity from like you as a DM's perspective. So let's say it's been a millennia, like 100 years of this.
Well, a millennia is 1,000.
Okay, my apologies.
You're fine.
Century.
You're fine. A century.
Century of this pocket dimension existing with, let's just say, some asshole general and his 700 men.
Yeah.
And their families and stuff. In that, are they trapped in like a ever existing time, or
so it's different?
Things progress as
it's different every time.
It's just shitty.
So there's it's different every time. There is so for Barovia with Strahd the Vampire Lord, he becomes immortal, so he can't die.
He does.
But his people continue to die and are reborn, and then they have more.
Reborn.
Yeah. So when you die in a domain of dread, your soul can't leave because the mists trap it. So eventually, the soul will find its way back into another body. But then you also have new people being born, but those new people being born don't have souls because it's cut off from the ethereal plane, from the astral plane, from all that shit.
No soul can actually enter it. So basically, people are procreating. A child is born as a husk, and
that's exactly what it's called.
Is coming.
It's called a husk.
Does it remember, or
no.
does it? It's
no.
just so it's
so you have
force.
You have the chance when a new child is born, like. They get slimmer and slimmer, but you might have a real soul with the child. But sometimes, most of the time, at the end, you're born with a husk as a child, and they're still alive. They still do stuff, but their emotions are toned down. They don't really think outside. Like they're not. They're just kind of like
what is it? The guys from the Dragon Age, the
Tranquil
Mage's Tower. The Tranquil essentially.
Yeah, to some extent.
They have feelings and emotions and stuff, but they are blank canvases of humans. They don't have personality. They don't have inspiration. They don't have.
Yeah. So there's that, and then like every so often a child will be born and they'll have a soul, and you'll know because their eyes will be bright. They'll hear like the main telltale sign of a child being born as a husk is they don't cry. They don't cry. So whenever like they just are born and they exist and that's it. They don't cry when they're born. Anytime the child cries, people get excited because like, oh, a soul. They've got a soul. So in that specific instance, that's how that's handled. But like there's other
badass campaign beginning is like protecting like the first child with a soul. You ever seen the movie Children of Men?
No.
It's got Clive Owen in it. That's not important. But the whole purpose is like all the men on the planet are sterile.
Yeah.
And the youngest person on the planet who was 18 was killed on accident. So now there will never be another child born on Earth. So everybody starts like falling into chaos because it doesn't matter. Everyone's going to die. Mm-hmm. And one woman becomes pregnant. And now every government on the world is trying to like get the mother and the child.
Yeah.
Same thing could happen with these planes. The only child born in 50 years that has a soul, and now everybody wants that child because it's the most realistic child.
Well, that mechanic is specific to Barovia. There's other planes that occur. So, like one of them, there's this general that's facing a zombie apocalypse in this fantasy setting.
Oh, okay.
And they made like all these horrible sacrifices to protect their people. They killed anyone they thought who had the virus, all this other shit, and they're trapped in like a time loop. So every night the zombies come and they kill more people, and every day they have like a respite, and then every night and it's just an endless horde of death, destruction. And while people are dying, the next day they're there, and the next day they're dead, and the next day they're there. And the general is having to relive every failure of their entire life over and over and over again, and they're getting more and more cruel.
Change, or does it?
No.
Does he change tactics, or is he just reliving?
So they might
like on autopilot or something.
But they're having to relive their greatest failures over and over again. So in that instance, there's no Like it's just the same day over and over again. In other worlds, there's new shit happening. There's more color. There's more life abounding. It just depends on what specifically you want to do, and it depends on what the dark powers would do in that instance for that dark lord.
Like they could essentially just close you off from the world and then have you like you could be living the same year over and over again and never realize it. Like that's their whole purpose is that they've literally just feeding off the life force of a city,
and they have
that they're still connected to the world, and they aren't at all. Like they're
so in this book, like it's called Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. They give you like ways of creating dark lords and dark realms and all this other shit. But they include like 40 or 50 of their own, which are really helpful and they're cool. There's but there's certain rules that always applies. Like the Dark Lord does not know they're a Dark Lord. The Dark Lord cannot leave their realm. The Dark Lord cannot die.
The person that is abducted that feeds the negative energy.
And the realm,
not the demonic spirit thing.
The domain cannot exist without the Dark Lord. So like let's say like you're running a campaign and someone kills somehow, like through an immense amount of strength kills this Dark Lord. The realm will collapse in on itself and kill everyone. So they've got like there's certain realms that like there's options to like find other Dark Lords, or maybe one of your characters becomes one. But there's one, I think it's Azalith, where the Dark Lord has disappeared and the realm's fracturing. So people are like there's like 4 people who are trying to vie for the power of this king that died, or disappeared, or maybe they left the realm finally, they got out or something, no one knows. But there's 4 individual people that your characters have to interact with, and maybe they choose one of them, or maybe they kill everyone and find a way out, or maybe one of the player characters becomes it. Like there's a lot of options, but there's certain rules that exist within these realms that keep them.
You have to figure out, I guess, like how to not kill, because like obviously an empathetic character is not going to want everyone to just die. So it's like, how can I save the most life?
Even though it's a hell, there's still people living there. It's not as removed morally as an actual hellscape.
It wasn't necessarily. Oh man, that also. But see again. So like I love a good story. So the more in depth the story, the crazier it gets. It's great because like you could have it gone to like the Dark Lord was never actually evil. His people sucked.
Yeah.
So now his purgatory is the fact that he is the Dark Lord of a group of people he is trying to do right by, but because they're evil.
Yeah, potentially.
In this position.
But one of the rules is that the Dark Lord is evil. The Dark Lord is corrupt, even if they don't know it. So like there's like that general who's killing all the zombies. She honestly thinks she's doing good by killing her people that are infected with all the shit, but her actions are actually bad. Like they're inflicting a lot of pain.
Like a North Korea on their people.
Yeah. So but she believes she's doing good. There are other Dark Lords who know they're doing evil, and it just depends. There's different ways to flesh it all out.
The sympathetic Dark Lord would probably be the hardest one to campaign through as a player, because it's like you feel like in that case, like you feel for them because like you understand that they are doing what they feel is best, even though it may not align necessarily with like necessary good.
Yeah,
like that would suck because especially like if you are like if you don't immediately recognize them as the Dark Lord, you could be fighting hand in hand with them, like helping them perpetuate the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so
never
you don't know.
realize that is the person that's holding this whole shitstorm together.
But there's like it's a bunch of, so that's my favorite realm per se because it allows a lot of creativity. It allows a lot of different storylines that can go through. You can spend an entire campaign in one demiplane, or you can spend an entire campaign in all of, like you could travel through all of them, getting shit done or not.
Some Doctor Strange shit, like breaking through demiplanes.
Yeah, so it allows a lot of fun, and it also is like it satisfies my dark, edgy DM side where I'm like, I want these people to fucking suffer.
So with that, okay, so you have like a demonic spirit thing that's holding that plane together using the Dark Lord, right?
It's not demonic.
So what is it that's
you don't know
providing that power to that?
You don't know. They don't give you any description of the dark powers in the books. They leave it up to you. There's some that say they're remnants of murdered gods. There's some people that like have them as like a Cthulhu-esque elder being. There's some people who have them as like just the pure embodiment of negative energy. But they leave that extremely open-ended for you because
like the negative energy that like necromancers could use.
Yeah.
So technically, like you could dispel a high enough powered necromancer could literally just end all of the problem.
Well, no, because they would have to destroy the power that they get their power from, which is not possible. If that makes sense. But it's all based on your own rules.
Because I mean, like if the demonic lord, not demonic, if the Dark Lord is holding the realm together because it is being influxed with power by a insert the blank here.
Yeah.
Could a necromancer having a powerful enough one. Obviously, like it would have to be some god tier level player character, but could they not just negate that power?
Potentially.
Like not destroy it, but just cut the feet off to the Dark Lord?
The answer to
like
the answer to every time you ask a question of if someone could do something, it's going to be
the
potentially because it's going to depend on what your DM wants to do. Like in mine specifically, I haven't like we've been in this campaign for fucking year or two now, and it's not getting anywhere really, but that's just because we don't meet enough. But the dark powers I haven't even like fleshed out. I've created like truths, like a series of 10 or 20 truths that they can find out about the dark powers, but there's no like they're not a corporeal entity. It's not like there's a, you know, behind the Dark Lord is a puppet master standing there and he comes out of the shadows and you can no, they're like more nebulous.
1,000 years of mortal hate that transpired into a thing.
Yeah, so it could be anything, and I like that it's open-ended like that, and it's more
because it makes the question is like, well, who's the real bad guy here? Is it the guy that's obviously doing the bad shit, or is there something? Again, it makes it easy to in storytelling to sympathize a character who would almost seem unsympathetic.
Yeah,
because it's like, yeah, he sucks, but what's happening is not because of him.
Yeah,
there is a bigger evil.
There's shit going on.
How do you
and I think that
the problem
it provides a multifaceted approach to dealing with it, because it's not as simple as let me go fight this thing and kill it and get the XP. It's more of, well, how do I handle this? Like the I had one of the demi-planes they had to go through in this realm. The Dark Lord was like this transformed dragon who presented himself as a high elf, but his daughter was on the train with him where they were at. So they had to like, okay, they can kill him, but they made friends with his daughter without realizing that was his daughter. So they had to come up with like, okay, if we're going to kill him, we're going to have to explain to his daughter. And in the end, they ended up having to sacrifice her body to keep the train from imploding on itself, but they only did that because they did some special bullshit with their dad, all the other stuff. So, and in the process, like they don't know this, but the train itself is its own demi-plane, and it travels throughout the rest of all the other domains of dread. And in killing the Dark Lord, they signed a contract without realizing it that made the four of them the Dark Lords of this train. Because otherwise
they're just like on the purgatory of a train that constantly passes through.
And they haven't realized it, but whenever they destroyed the Dark Lord, the rules of this domain, which they didn't find out because I don't think they were paying attention, was that whoever kills the Dark Lord becomes the Dark Lord. Like it's a very simple.
They did it as a group.
Yeah, they all four became one, and like
so. How does? So I mean, technically, I guess they could do there can only be one and just murder each other until there's only one left.
Well, they don't know this, and they also don't know why they've got this like otherworldly power whenever they go to these other realms. They don't know why the train's taking them to all these places. So
what I say, but they can leave their plane of the train into other.
The train itself.
The protection of it, like treating them like they.
The train itself is a domain, and it is traveling to other domains, but they don't know how to control it. They don't know where it's going. And I base where it's going based on like artifacts they've picked up and clues they've bitten into, but they're not paying it.
So there has to be like a link to another plane that. Yeah. So like if they had found like a ring from a citizen of another demi-plane, then okay, well because there's some sort of link through that artifact, the train takes them through that demi-plane, but like they have no fucking idea why it's doing it because that was just a copper ring they picked up.
Yeah, so like and I've not like I started this campaign, I didn't know that's where it was going, so like the best clues probably would have been at the beginning, but like now I've kind of morphed things into more combat centric because they seem to enjoy combat more than anything else, so I've kind of adapted the play style to suit that, which is fine. I don't care.
That's like a mixture of like Snowpiercer and Infinitrain.
Yeah, to some extent, and it's cool to see them sort of learn as they go what's happening, and I think that eventually they'll get to a point when we meet, probably a little bit more often, they'll be able to recognize what the fuck's going on, because when you meet like once or twice a month, it's difficult to pick up on the bylines that are running through, and that's fine. Like I'm trying to be a little bit more obvious with it because we're not meeting as much, so I've had to adopt, like I said, I've had to adapt like how I tell the story and shit. I've got to put a lot more emphasis on the key points of what's happening, and I also need to make sure they don't listen to this episode because I definitely dropped some spoilers.
My bad.
No, you're fine. I don't mind talking about it.
It's educational for me.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
If everybody else watching this is thinking it's educational, I'm learning a lot. I love this. I think that's the thing about being a DM that would make me the happiest is like obviously I would need to know the books and know how the game works, but I love world building and I love a good story. So like dude, if you wrote a book, I'd read every fucking one of them. I would genuinely read anything you wrote because I think it would be awesome.
I
'Cause
appreciate that.
I love the world building. I love the idea of it. That's when I did an audio drama
Oh wow.
called I'm in two. One's still active. The other one sadly shut down because there was a disagreement with the writer and the production company.
Oh.
You can find one episode of the one I'm mentioning right now on Spotify, but it's only episode 3, which makes no sense. But
Yeah.
it's called Marotech University. It was like a mixture of the X-Files and Supernatural,
Yeah.
but based out of a college. And season 1, very cut and dry. Introduction to the characters, introduction to the kind of thing going on, but it's a lot of D&D influence in the sense of like the type of creatures you run into and the type of like eldritch horrors you can kind of face and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Season 2, I don't know if you know what SCP is.
Yeah, no,
Brings a lot of
I read a bunch of
SCP
that shit
into the world. There's like a whole government facility with a lot of weird shit. I got to sit down with the writer for season 2 because I had questions about the character I played named Aaron.
Yeah.
And he let me see, and I hate it, man. I was so excited for this. I was probably on the Discord call for like 18 hours. Like, no kidding.
Jesus Christ.
He went through the entire second season script with me in like 7 episodes. And these are long, like hour and a half episodes. Are in this facility and all this shit's going on. And I got to write with him for like specific key point, and now it doesn't matter because it'll never come to fruition. So one of the characters is the director of this SCP place.
Yeah.
And when all things go to shit, it's me, a lady that my character had history with, and this director. And when shit starts going to garbage, like the facility is just collapsing in on itself, like all of the fucking containment is just breaching like a mofo. And so it's all this stuff. And one of them, and I'll never forget this because I love this idea. It is an AI operated operating table.
Yeah.
That sole directive is to save the life of whatever is on it.
Wow, okay.
And like by any means necessary. And the thing that makes it like an SCP type creature thing is that it comes up with things that no mortal has ever seen for life-saving procedures. Like, it can 3D print a living tissue heart.
Oh, nice.
Without the materials to do so. Like, it's just one of those things that somebody made it and we don't know how it works and they put it away because it goes overboard. Like, it'll start putting like 7 hearts in you to make you a better human kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that is there. Okay, that was a brief mention, foreshadowing like a mofo, but like not in a way that makes it obvious. There's this thing. There's a guy. He's a dead guy that they put the brain of a soldier who died in combat in this super body that's like super fucked up, and a demonic spirit essentially kind of ripped off the book Cain, but kind of takes over. So it's like half AI, half demonic possession, and it literally rips the director apart, like just destroys him. We get a phone call at the end of the season, and it's the director, and the operating table has like fused him into the table to keep him alive. It was the craziest.
Yeah, that's actually an SCP
like,
though,
bro.
The operating table. That operating table is a real SCP though.
Is it? Oh, that's cool.
It's a chair. It's a chair that you sit in, and it will pump you full of various fluids and organs and other shit to fix you. But it doesn't have a limit on how it tries to fix you. Like, it might try to. If you set a normal human in there, it might go, okay, well, you're not evolved for flight, so I'm going to break your arms and stitch them to your back so you can fly. So it
just evolves you, and however it's like a machine that God, we could talk about SCPs all day because I fucking love that lore. But,
yeah.
It's like the machine that refines or de-refines things. So if you put a Coke can in it, you de-refine it, you get like pure aluminum.
Yeah, if you refine it, you get like a nicer Coke can.
Yeah, like made of glass or something, just like whatever, which is crazy because it doesn't make a decision. It is based off of who is putting it in and what your version of refinement would be for that item.
Yeah.
So if you put coal in there, you might get a diamond, even though necessarily that's not how that would work. Mm-hmm. It's crazy, man. The people that write that shit are some of the geniuses of the world, man. I don't know. Like, some of them are stupid. One of them was like a fucking, like a McDonald's sign that when you look at it, it changes colors. And then when you look back, it's never the same. It's dumb shit. But like, God, man, for years, SCP-087-B, the In the Stairwell.
Yeah.
I had a 32-page script written for an SCP web series because that one alone would require the least amount of money to make. Mm-hmm. All you would need is a couple of floodlights, a decent camera, like 3 or 4 actors, and just good camera angles and a concrete stairwell. You could make a 3-story stairwell look infinite very easily. And it's like, God, I wanted to, because it's written for you. If you look at the SCP files, all the transcripts between the convicts and the researchers are there. It was just adapting it to. Oh God, I was so excited for that shit, man. That was my college days. I was so into that shit. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go.
No, you're fine. You're good. We could do a whole podcast separately about SCPs, and I would be perfectly content to discuss them with you.
That is another. I yes, but no, because that again. See, like I say, D&D isn't like it's not a saturated market already, but SCPs also have some fantastic podcasts that I feel like we would just be a drop in the bucket in comparison to, outside of just us fangasming all over specific SCPs. Also, I think it's funny that guy tried to sue the SCP Foundation website and like make all that money. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck that was about. It was obnoxious.
Finally beat it, but that was so.
They did, but it was really sad because everyone's like, "Oh my god, it might get shut down. It might get shut down." Jesus.
Well, you did see that. Not 087. The statue, the moving statue that's like the weeping angel thing.
Yeah.
You did see that that's no longer the canonical look for it, right?
Yeah, they changed that.
Because it was a Japanese artist's work, and he was supportive of using it, but out of respect for it, the SCP like official website like changed the artwork so people wouldn't connotate that man's art with this thing. Like they wanted it to be that man's sculpture.
Yeah.
So it was a very noble reason for changing it, and everyone agreed. And the guy, again, the artist was super grateful that his work was getting exposed, but it was for the wrong reasons. So obviously they wanted to. But yeah, that's super cool, man. That's such a cool community. That Reddit page is also like some of the friendliest people on Reddit. It's so cool.
They're a good community.
So cool. The D&D community on Reddit is a lot more vicious. There's a lot of like people who are like buy the book, and people are like, nah, man, it's just like those are like recommendations. Like you just have fun with it, and they're like, no. This is the way it's done.
Yeah, and there's a lot of rules lawyering and shit, but I mean, there's good people out there.
But
it's not
a lot of things, though. I mean, you know, obviously, I have my specific passions of lore and stuff, and it's the same thing there.
Skyrim.
Like we talked about last night, just like specific things within the Elder Scrolls that people can't agree on, and they argue with constantly of like what is specific to, you know, Mer lore and stuff like, oh, well, these aren't real descendants of this because it was actually based off of like in the first era. And it's like, okay, cool. But there's nothing, like, this is all speculation at this point. You're willing to die on that hill.
Yeah.
So who knows? One day I will have an Elder Scrolls podcast, and I would love to have you on there.
That would be fun. Whew. Well,
all right, so let's hit this last question and we can wrap up the thing, and I'll lead into the next one, and then we'll call it a day because we you know, obviously things have to be done today. The question I asked you at the end of the last episode, if you remember, was what is the hardest hurdle to overcome when introducing a new player to an established group? So you've got 4 people that have been playing for your year and a half, 2 years, and Joe is like, hey man, my brother Steve wants to show up. He's played a couple games before, but he's still very novice. We're fairly far in the campaign. Here he is.
Yeah. I think the hardest hurdle to overcome, and I'm going to keep it very simple, is expectations. I think that new players come in expecting something, and old players have someone new come in expecting something, and that you've got to bridge the gap between expectation and reality. So a lot of new players, especially who've not had a lot of opportunity to be around D&D, expect like super nerd, LARPing, voice act, all that shit, or they've seen Critical Role and they assume it's going to be like super professional, super entertaining, super great, and you have to bridge that expectation to reality and say, well, it's none of that because we're just 4 guys who work full time. And we want to play a game together. And then the other players who are having this new person come in, they're expecting. Well, you don't know. You have to do that. Sometimes they'll expect someone who has experience. Sometimes they'll expect someone who has no experience. And you've got to bridge that gap again to say, hey, we're going to have to work together as a team to figure out how this is going to work, especially if it's already an established campaign and not just an established. Like in the middle of a campaign, it's the hardest because shit's already happened. They form these bonds, and this new guy comes in. And it's like, well, I've already worked with this person for 6 months to like develop backstory and personality and habits and shit. And you're here. I'm not going to give you the same level of friendliness and shit. And you gotta. And I've never had it be bad, like people be rude and shit. But it's always difficult to introduce a new character to an old group and it not at least have some tension or some awkwardness or some inability to find common ground.
So let me ask you this: with a new person, so in the scenario I gave you, would you typically have them get a character that's been buffed so that they are at least within a usable reach
I
of the
don't. I don't.
established characters, or do you just say nope, level
It
1, you're
depends.
just here?
It honestly depends. I prefer starting them at level 1 just because they need to learn their character, and especially if they're new to D&D, they're going to go into it at level 5 or 6 and have no clue how their spells work, their mechanics work, their background works, all that other shit. So I prefer them to start at level 1, and maybe they hide behind the group for the first few fights and just collect XP, but at least they learn how their shit works. And I appreciate their commitment to playing, but I need them to learn their character.
So let me ask you this, and this is strictly just a thought I'm having, and your opinion. Okay, so character or person that's never played, right? And obviously you have an established campaign, and let's say it's towards the end of that campaign. So introducing a new character at this point would almost be not worth the effort because the game might end. Instead of just having them sit out and watch, would you think it would be a good learning tool to have them attempt to help you with NPCs?
Yeah.
So like if there was an NPC battle, they could get used to battle mechanics by playing the NPC for educational purposes? Because then you could kind of guide them through how it works. I mean, nothing.
I think it's not bad.
I
think it's not bad, but I would still prefer they make a character. I would still prefer that they get that experience under the belt. Even if it's like for the last boss fight, I still want them to make a character because making a character takes the longest amount of time of anything, and it's something you do a lot of, and you need to learn it. Just like you need to learn math in school, you need to learn how to make a character efficiently. Otherwise, you're going to be at a loss when we start our next session, and these people have made 6 characters, and you still haven't made one.
And you're used to playing a goblin.
Exactly, and you're used to playing someone that I've propped up with good spells and shit.
Right, because I'm just thinking for like the idea of like introduction to D&D. Like if you had like a 15-year-old brother that was like, oh, I've never played and I want to look at it, you could be like, all right, cool. So this is kind of how the game works. You sit with me. I'm going to walk you through how they did their things.
And I think that you can do that even while they have their own character made. I think that you can still kind of pause and say, all right, this is why they did that. This is why they did this, et cetera, et cetera.
Because again, like if they're level 1 and everybody else is like level 14, they obviously, as you stated, they're kind of just playing the backfield. And unless they're like a support type character, they're not really going to be useful. So they could help in some facet. So they're not just sitting through the battle, just like, all right, cool, I'm here, like having a great time.
Yeah.
That's personally me, because again, I don't know. I've never DM'd, so I don't know how easy that would be to do or not do. So.
Yeah, I think it's different for everyone, but I would yeah, they would need to create a character sheet, and I think that's the most helpful thing you can do for them.
Well, would you prefer? Okay, so instead of using them to like assist you as a DM, would you prefer doing like an introductory campaign, like a backstory campaign or something, like just a
I'm not against a one shot.
Kind of.
Yeah, to like introduce them and shit. I wouldn't be against that. But it depends on the person and it depends on the group because everyone's got different experience levels.
Assume that it has to do also with the narrative because if you're like 2 feet from the door of the final boss and they're like,
flashback time.
Backstory, let's go over here and help that guy with his plots.
It's not good for continuity just to fucking skip around like that sometimes.
Just jump off and do the Andy thing. He's like, "Hello, you found me from the ethereal plane.
Surprise!
I'm here now." Or did you just find out somebody plane shifted this guy and I was just with the party?
It's like this does not work.
Yo, I was just chilling and some dude broke into my house and the next thing I know I'm here. The hell? I was like, well, I guess you're with us now. Fuck.
Yeah, but
quick, use them as fodder.
So I think that's the easiest answer to the question. What's the question for next week, though?
So the question for next week, because you've given me a lot to think about, is when you are, and this is specific to you, when you are building a world, when you are setting up a new campaign for new players or even old vet players for you, what is the first detail that you come up with? And part 2 of that is, what do you think the most important part of the setting of your campaign is first? Like if you in the hierarchy of decisions to be made, is it what plane am I in? Who's the big boss? How do I build a campaign off of that boss? Like what is the world environment or like the civil situation of what's going on? Like what to you is the most important thing when you build a world?
That's a good question. That's fair. I'll have to think on that for at least longer than a day. Because that's more than 8 minutes before the stream starts.
The amount of sex the campaign has. That's the first.
Yeah, how much I'm gonna let happen. But no, I think that's a good question.
Gonna be like a bonus episode for Patreon. Is we'll talk about sex in D&D. That way, it cockblocks anyone that wants to hear what your opinion is.
Jesus Christ.
Unless they pay us money.
Give us money to hear me talk about how much I hate sex in D&D.
The fact that like, obviously, if you put enough nerds in a room, they're gonna have sex with something. But like, it's just like odd to think that there's like potentially like 4 dudes in a basement somewhere, and some guy is explaining how his barbarian human is sleeping with an orc. It's just like, why is this happening?
Yeah, but anywho, this has been What's in the Dungeon podcast. That's Murph. I'm John. We have a Twitter. We have a YouTube. We have our separate streams that are linked. I haven't streamed anything in a while because shit's been going down. Shit's been happening. True. But still good. Look forward to next week and discussing that question that you've now posted. If you have questions, please email them. If you want to see us talk about specific topics, even if it's just a general topic and it doesn't have anything to do with D&D, we'll probably still talk about it. And just try to keep it...
Don't be afraid, even if you're watching the VODs, to send in questions.
Yeah.
Even if you're watching the VODs, send in the questions because we'll get to them at some point.
And
we might do an entire episode of just questions you guys asked.
But you have to send them in.
Answer everything in detail.
You have to send them in because we have 0. If you're part of my D&D group and you watch this, you've done bad.
Mark.
I told y'all not to watch, and if you watched it and you spoiled all this, you're gonna fucking die in the next episode. Sorry, haha. I'll know. I'll look in your eyes and I'll know you saw the truth. But check us out or don't. But thank you for anyone who watched and listened to us ramble on today. It was a little bit more structured than last time. I feel we stayed like pretty much on theme with D&D, which was good.
Yeah, obviously I offshoot because that's what I do.
That's okay.
It may
still talks about some good stuff.
The direction we thought we were going with the episode, but this was probably the most educational episode we've had because
we talked about a lot. We did a big info dump, and I think that was
fun.
But anyway,
we actually had stuff on screen too.
Yeah, true.
We're becoming professional.
Woo! Very professional. Anyway, everyone take care. Thank you for watching, and we will now end this and see you next week. Bye.
Bye.